All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you know what happens when you hit the play button. You get nothing but unbelievable people that have unbelievable stories that are doing some things that you're just getting you through the moment. They have a mindset, a element to them that is just about positivity and going through the ups and downs and all the things that life has to that life is going to throw at you. Today, Luis Hernandez, man, I mean, if there was if there was the best word to describe what he's all about is synergy. I'm literally an hour away from just landing out here in West Palm Beach from Trinidad. I just had a 5 day, pretty much a 5 day vacation in Trinidad and Tobago. And so many parts of your story, Lewis, hit home with me because both my parents, my mom and my dad's side, they have all of the parents that have left properties in Trinidad for us to inherit as we were, growing up, and we saw the poverty that they came from and things like that. And, you have a very similar background in terms of coming up from poverty, having a kind of a rough upbringing and, building things and going through life's ups and downs and things like that. So, with all that, I'll let you kind of grab the mic for a little bit and talk a little bit about your background, some of the difficulties that you had coming up, and how, people may look at you now and say, man, you're successful and you're doing great things, but they see the finished product. They don't see all of the ups and downs that you had to go through growing up. So, grab the mic a little bit and kind of introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you, Aswan. First of all, the only correction I got to make, man, is I don't think I'm the finished product yet. I think there's a long ways to go. We got a lot more great things to do,
That,
right?
that is true, and,
Uh,
and I'm glad you made that correction because to the listeners, it is important to know that you're never actually a finished product. You're never,
that's right.
and this is what I mean when I say, we bring people on that give you something to get you through the moment. You're never actually going to be finished. There's always more work to do. There's always things you can be doing to get better. So thank you for the correction. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and honestly, on that note, I think that's something a mindset shift that took me many years to recognize. When we were little growing up, my mom always said, "Hey, you learn English and you go to school and you can be very successful." So
Mhm.
I kind of imagined, there was that proverbial winning lottery ticket on the back of a diploma, right? Like you're gonna cross the
Yep,
stage and that's it,
exactly.
you won, right? You're
The
gonna like
concept of school seems so secure. The concept of it
exactly,
feels secure.
exactly. And it was all but that, right?
Mhm.
And you get out and you just, that's when real life begins, right?
Right. Now, the,
Um,
the question though I have
yeah.
though, that because like you, I have parents that migrated here from a different country. It was Trinidad.
Mhm.
Yours were
Mhm.
Colombian. My mom stayed in Brooklyn when she first got here, and when they see the college element, there's a trust factor in it because they come from where they come from. Like I was actually talking to her just on this family reunion. I was like, you're rich compared to what you come from. How do you feel about the people that come in, parents like yours that came in, worked hard? That concept of school, of just getting your kid to school, though, that's kind of like a win for them. But the people that have grown up in the
Totally.
States, sometimes it can be like, wait a minute, I know this stuff and I got to college and it didn't feel like, oh my God, now all of a sudden I made it. There's so much that was like disappointing in terms of what we were expecting from the college experience.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's the big misnomer, right? We think my parents were really proud. They still are very, very proud of me for going to college and doing well. And I think all my nieces and nephews, they kind of think of me as like the rich uncle. And I don't consider myself,
Hmm.
very. I mean, we're much better off than I was growing up or all that. But by no
Right.
means would I describe myself as being incredibly wealthy,
Hmm.
right? Like we do okay, and we get, it isn't a financial struggle like it was, but we're not financially independent yet. And and I think that there was that misnomer thinking that if you go to college, you're automatically really rich and,
Yeah.
everything is roses, and
Yeah.
it's definitely not, right? So,
Right. And it's
and
also a
to, and
state of mind. So I'm glad you mentioned that because it's another thing that I want to make sure we point out to the listeners is being rich and being wealthy is actually a state of mind. All right. It's an actual
totally,
state of mind
totally.
because you've again, and you're gonna get into your story in a second. Trust me, listeners. I'm gonna let them get there. Just so I listen to it myself, and I'm kind of moved because I'm still coming down from it. But you had experiences where you had no money, but your mindset was there. Your mindset was, all right, I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna be able to provide and things like that. So, like I said, go ahead,
No
take.
doubt. Yeah, I'll even say I have experiences like that now to this
Right,
day, but now I don't worry about it. Like
because you've seen it, right?
I know I can do it. Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, it's not a big deal. There's times when, things don't always add up and you got to figure out, okay, let's go hustle and get it done. Right. So,
Absolutely,
um,
1,000%. That's that
yeah,
Colombian hustler, man. I'm influenced. There's a lot of Hispanic. There's a huge Hispanic population out here, so that Colombian Cuban hustle, I love it,
that's
man.
right.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely
And in
love
particular, my family is actually from Medellin, Colombia, which has a really good reputation of
it.
like extreme hustle. I
Yeah,
don't know if you ever heard of Michael Porter. If you ever go
the
to
name.
business school, there's something you study called
Yeah, the
Porter's
name
Five
sounds familiar.
Forces.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Porter's Five Forces. He had a company called the Monitor Company. And
Mhm,
back during the Clinton era, he would go to countries all around the world and he would analyze, this is when globalism was really taking off, right?
mhm,
And so he would look at what are the right countries to go and do business with, what is the
mhm,
culture like, all that. And from that, they kind of looked at what are the assets and the mindset of the people. And they
mhm,
looked at, there were two countries in particular in the world, or two cities actually in the world that he determined were just the people were incredible hustlers, just really enterprising,
yeah.
right? And one of them was, my people from Medellin, Colombia.
Okay.
We call it La Pujanza Paisa, right? And
Yeah.
it's and I'm kind of proud of. And even in college, when people come visit from other
Mhm,
parts of Colombia, we'd be doing things like my Latin American student organization.
mhm.
We'd organize like flea markets and stuff, yard sales out in the quad,
Yeah.
and people would see that I'd already, and they're like, oh, it would take of course a paisa would do something like that. Like that's the
Yeah. Yeah.
people that Medellin. The other one was Ho Chi Minh City, the former Saigon in Vietnam, by the way. And
Hmm.
I did have a chance to go visit that when I was in grad school, and you
Right.
could see it. The people, little kids from very young age, are just doing anything they can to make money.
Right.
Just they're making little crafts, and they're coming up to you and offering to shine your shoes, and people are coming up to you and measuring you to make you shirts and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's an amazing hustle culture, and I really respect and love that.
Oh man, it's so coincidental we're having this conversation, man. I just less than 24 hours ago, I was in Trinidad and Tobago, and me and my mom
Yeah,
were walking down the street. We're talking to people that are picking coconuts off the tree, cutting it, selling it, still
yeah,
they're like real true us. I was actually inspired because you realize how
absolutely.
good we have it in the States, and too
Yeah,
many of us walk around with that entitlement issue, and so many of us don't get the fact that just going to college does not make it so you deserve anything. Ain't nobody gonna give you nothing.
nothing.
You got to go out and hustle regardless. So if you're just sitting in your classroom, sitting behind the lecture hall, and expecting that degree is just gonna automatically land you a six-figure job, you got another thing coming. There's people out there
Yeah,
to actually make money. So
yeah, no doubt. And and I think once you start to there's a level of what's the word, like, of arrogance, I think, that you get when you do go to college, especially
no,
first
no, that's
gen.
the
Your
word.
family.
Arrogance. The word is exactly right. Arrogance.
Yeah, yeah, I had to look for it because I was going to say conceitedness, but the your family, it feeds your ego so much, right? And you don't want to disappoint them, so you almost
Yeah,
start to fall into that, and you start to feel like you're better than anything. And for
yeah,
many years, I had developed that, and I wouldn't go, and do something because, like, I would feel like, hey, I'm above that now. I have a degree, and I've met many of my classmates and everything,
right.
especially once I got my MBA, that
Hmm.
just weren't willing to do things
Hmm.
because they have an MBA. They're not going to
Right.
settle for, and there is something to that, but I also think there's something to willing to still get your hands dirty. And
Yeah.
here's a good example.
Hmm.
I look for businesses to buy all the time, and I love those sweaty businesses, right? The blue collar business. One of the things I used to do in college was clean carpets, and lately I've been looking at carpet cleaning businesses, right?
Hmm.
And I found one, actually, a guy in my neighborhood who has a couple of vans and in a business that he's folding up, and we're talking, and somebody, he connected me with somebody else, for financing and all this stuff, and then the guy was like, "Oh yeah, I want to do business with you. Let's partner and all this stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, well, what do you bring to the table?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not going to go clean carpets." And I'm like, "Why not?" And I'm thinking the first thing, I don't know. I'm still like this to this day.
Yeah.
It may be to a fault, but I believe, like, you got to learn the business from the bottom up,
Yeah.
right? Like, you got
Right.
to, that way, who's cheating you, who's lying to you,
Right.
who's, how you can build efficiencies within the business, all that. Now,
Right.
do I need to go clean a carpet? No. Absolutely not. Is it going to
Right.
slow me down? Yeah, maybe. But
Right.
you know what? I think A, it'll give me like a lot more respect out of all my employees.
Okay.
And B, it's going to help me understand that business inside out better than anything. Am I going to do it for life? No, I'm going to do it for a little bit, but I'll
Right.
get my hands dirty.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great way to go into a field where you don't, whatever business you get into,
So
you know?
on that point though, because I mean, real estate, you've expressed that real estate's kind of been one of your main ways of doing business, whether it's
Yeah.
residential, leave the company that you have now is venturing into some commercial properties as well. But you started in Rhode Island. And
Yeah.
I believe you went to a school that wasn't part of it was inner city, the poverty was there. I want to say the stat you used was in every, bad statistical category, teen pregnancy,
Yeah.
well, just a lot of things going on
Yeah. Yeah.
very conducive to development. Talk a little bit about what your mindset was back then and how it has helped you develop now. Because
Yeah.
those
Sure.
situations,
Sure.
like you had mentioned, a lot of kids don't make it out of because it's such an easy road to slip down. And
That's right.
as I'm watching my niece and my nephew go through those teenage years, I'm thinking it's so much more important now because this beast of social media, man, it's a different animal than when we went to. It's a different beast. So anyway,
It
go ahead.
really is. Yeah, and and prior to living in Rhode Island, I actually lived in Queens, New York. We lived in Jackson
Yeah, yeah,
Heights,
I
which,
remember. Yeah.
but the we when we moved to, I actually think that's a bigger advantage when you come from, especially New York, where
Mhm.
you dream big, you think big. That's just part of the culture, and you do get exposure to a
Yeah.
lot of people of all different walks of life, no matter what your conditions are like, right? Because you'll live in a building, and in that building, it might be a doctor, or a lawyer, an engineer, even if you're in the hood, right? Whereas if you once you move to Central Falls, Rhode Island, a small square mile city of about 80,000 people,
Hmm.
everybody there is either an immigrant or a child of immigrant, and they are living that story, and they're poor. Most of them had not. Most of our parents did not go to college.
Hmm.
Some did, but that was in their home country, so their degrees were useless there. So all of our parents, did like those really menial entry level jobs in this country,
Right.
like cleaning, factory work,
Hmm.
you name it. So we all grew up that way. We all grew up like getting fake IDs very young so we can go and work in a factory and make money to help pay the rent. Like that was all me and my friends, and most of us English was a second language. And my friends came from either, Colombia, Dominican Republic, or Cape Verde Islands, or, something like that.
Right.
And so it isn't usually till around middle school where everybody starts to integrate and talk, and what have you, and there's different things. So the
Now
mindset is very different.
you were in Queens and then you went to Rhode Island,
That's right.
like for
Yeah,
high
for my
school.
high school years
Right.
were in Rhode Island. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah,
so you
yeah.
basically that's basically two places in which you had the child, so Queens and then Rhode Island, and then
That's right.
I just wanted to make sure I get
Yeah,
some context.
yeah, that's right. And like I said, in Queens, even though, it's New York City, incredibly diverse and all that, but you get a lot more diverse exposure in terms of, the socioeconomic statuses,
Yeah.
right? Whereas in Central Falls, Rhode Island, you don't. Like everybody's poor, everybody,
Hmm.
is working the low entry jobs. And so when your parents are trying to hook you up with a job for something, it's going to be carpet cleaning like it was for me, right?
Hmm.
So it wasn't to go get a job at the local golf range or anything like,
Yeah, yeah.
country club, what have you.
Hmm.
So yeah, the difference I think is when you see success as a young kid, you
Hmm.
don't see it so much as you don't have an example of somebody who's gone to college and done well,
Yeah.
right? The real success that you see, honestly, unfortunately, are the negative people in society, the drug dealers,
Hmm.
the gangsters, people who are just not doing. There's a couple of athletes, but even in Central Florida, you don't you're not going to get a LeBron James coming out of there like that really makes it big. It's just local athletes and such,
Exactly.
but most people don't go very far, and a lot
Right.
of them don't even go to college.
Right.
So you grow up thinking, hey, yeah, well, I'm going to be a successful drug dealer. I mean, let's just
Exactly.
be real. They're the ones who have the money, they got the nice cars, they got the nice jobs, all that. I mean, the nice girls, all the whole nine. They're, they,
So
yeah.
with your situation, I want to make sure we give context here because you were
Mhm.
around that throughout high school. Yet you
Hmm.
still maintained I guess a grade point average. You stayed on top of your academics enough to land you is it was Northeastern, and was it in Boston?
Yep.
You're right. So what was that transition like? Because you're coming from
Yeah.
what I like to call like the land of hustlers, the people that are doing what they
Yeah.
know it's wrong technically, but they're doing what they have to do to survive. And you're learning a lot of skills lessons, you're learning a lot of sales lessons, a lot of just, look, I have to survive and I don't want to do it, but it's just what I know to survive. They're not going out there trying to be, or there's some people are, but it depends on people's situation. There's some people that are out there genuinely just trying to do what they know. But then you get to
Yeah.
college, you're on this campus, and that had to be like a complete like 300, like a complete culture shock for you in terms of mindset and how things were going. So walk us through those years and how you were able to adjust to that, that significant culture shock.
Sure, sure. I mean, first of all, I think getting there, yeah, I mean, initially the idea of going to college was for all the wrong reasons, right? It was like I had a friend who was a couple of years ahead of me who, we'd cut school and go hang out with him on a campus, first at the community college, and then he transferred into University of Rhode Island.
Oh, okay.
And we would go just to party. And we're like,
Right.
wow, these parties are great. You meet people, you have fun, and
Right.
they don't break out into fights every time. Like it's a good
Oh,
time. So I'm like, man, this is the life, right? Like
oh,
this is a good time. So that really was my first intro
wow. I
to
need
college.
so wow. Wow.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was the motivation. Okay.
at first, and then
Yeah.
yeah, I was pretty smart academically, but I wouldn't like I wasn't an overachiever. Like I did well on my tests, I'd show up to class,
Hmm.
but if I didn't get my homework done within school, I wasn't getting it done. So
Hmm.
but my teachers, luckily they got me into some programs where people would come in and take a few of us who might have some potential out to go visit different colleges around New England and help us apply to college and all that. And that's how I got in. I got into, URI, UConn,
Hmm.
Northeastern, obviously, a few others. And then once I was there, yeah, it was a big, big shell shock. For the first of all, my roommate, almost everybody, first of all, when you grow up in this environment, like most people are people of color. We're all Latinos or other parts of the world, as kids of immigrant or immigrants. We're all really poor. My roommate, he came from Natick, Massachusetts, which is a pretty well-to-do suburb. His father was, I think, a dean at the school, you
Hmm.
know, um, all these different things. And everybody on my floor was like that. And they put me, I mean, in my dorm, and they did put me in an international hall, but the international students were even wealthier, right? Because to come to school in the US, they're big wealth. And I was pretty good at chess, and I would play chess with them, and they would take me out. I mean, these were freshmen going out in like Beamers and all this stuff, and
Right. Right.
they
Right.
take me out to these fancy dinners. I mean, lunches just to play
Hmm.
chess with them, and yeah, it exposed me to riches I didn't even know were like that. And I'm like, wow, maybe there's another way,
Hmm.
right? And yeah, that was interesting. The other part that was interesting was, although I thought I was smart and was way ahead for my old high school and college, like I didn't know how to use a computer. We didn't have computers, right?
Hmm.
So like all of a sudden you have
And
to
what year was this?
hand in 94.
Oh yeah. So
Right.
it was
So
still.
yeah, I had to go write a 5-page paper, for example. Every class like required a 5-page paper almost every week, and it had to be typed. I didn't know how to type. I didn't have access to computers. So you have to go wait in line at the computer lab. You're there all night till they close, get up again early to go. I couldn't take it. I couldn't take the workload on top of all of the
Mhm.
other academic rigors. So I really, even though I worked way harder than I had ever worked before, it was a real struggle. And I had a full ride for engineering, and I actually lost it because I couldn't keep my grades up, even though I tried really hard.
Right.
And but I ended up going back home that following summer and had an experience where, I was hanging out with my friends, and there were police involved, and the police kind of, they check our for us for IDs, and they see I have a Northeastern ID, and they're like, "Hey, you got a chance to get out of here. Get out of here, man. There's nothing here for you,"
Wow.
and all this stuff. And it kind of like woke me up, and I went back, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna go back because I'm like, how am I gonna afford it and all this stuff.
Right.
And it made me go back. Thank God, and ended up getting in some debt because of it, but it all worked out. But it really got me. I changed my major,
Hmm.
and it got easier for me as time went on. But I it was then that's when I started like partying and all that stuff for a little bit and
Right.
living that life. But that didn't last long. By then it really showed me I knew then that I could hang, I could be a leader on campus, I can get, good jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, at that time I was thinking I'm going to get out and get a 30, $40,000 a year job. And that was all the money in the world.
Yeah.
So I thought I was going to be set,
Right. So
so
there's a couple of things I want to make sure we emphasize too as listeners is sometimes that can be what college is all about. It can be an
right.
experience of where you used to be, or know you're doing the wrong thing. Somebody just sees your ID and they just say, "Hey, look, you got an opportunity to get out. You got an opportunity." And whoever, kind of gave you that opportunity, that's somebody that's a blessing. And as you
Yeah.
think about what college can be, understand it's an inner work, it's an inner battle. We're not here bashing college by any means. We're telling you, you got to know what you want on the inside, and you got to really have it burning on the inside to get the most out of college. You can't just go to go, right? Next thing
That's right.
is what you actually went through after college. And like you mentioned, you thought 30K was probably a lot of money, but you had an experience, and I'll let you kind of tell the story. You had an experience, I believe, when in my hometown is Silver Spring, Maryland. So when you're talking about that
Oh
earlier,
yeah.
going to Maryland, you had an experience. I believe you said you went to Baltimore and you saw some
Yep.
properties and you saw some things that were like, wow, this is an opportunity that I'm kind of picking up on my own that college didn't necessarily teach me, but I went through the school and I have confidence and things like that. So go ahead, you can kind of explain what, because I believe
Yeah.
you work as a scout or something like that, and then you
Yeah,
saw
yeah, yeah. My
properties
first
out.
job out
Right,
of
right.
college was for the Boy Scouts of America. And,
Yeah.
my wife and I were looking to leave Boston because we just, I believed in buying a place as soon as I could, and I couldn't
Yeah.
afford to get one anywhere there.
Mm-hmm.
So we were looking for jobs outside of Boston, and I was promotable, and I got a promotion out in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to interview there. And yeah, I'll never forget that night when we were pulling in. It was kind of like the sun was setting into the inner harbor. And when you come into the
Oh
inner harbor
yeah,
of Baltimore,
it's a beautiful place. Yes, I know
it
exactly.
really is. It really
Yeah.
is. And we went out and I'm like driving around, before we even got to the hotel,
Huh?
and we got lost somewhere. It doesn't take much from there. And you're on
Exactly.
the
Yep.
street
Yep.
and I start seeing all these board ups. And at first I was like, oh, cool, a board up. I wonder what that is like. Cause you only see one on a rare occasion in New England.
Uh-huh.
But there, and then I start seeing like block after block. And I'm like, oh man, I just saw that like with wide open eyes, like, wow, this must be the land of opportunity,
Hmm.
And I started looking into that. And yeah, before you know it, I find out you can buy some of these for like as little as like 10,000. I eventually bought them for even less sometimes.
Now,
And
as you look back on that, because that's the one of the things I'm always curious about. As you look back on that now, what do you think made it so you thought of it in that way? That you looked at it like with the glass half full mentality? Like, was it just the fact that you were coming through a certain area? What do you think attributed you seeing those board ups and saying, "Man, this is opportunity. This isn't just poverty."
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think first of all, when I was a kid and we lived in Queens, my father was a super.
Mhm.
That's the people who take care of the buildings. And
Yeah.
so from a very young age, I was used to going like knew how to fix stuff. I loved tinkering on houses and I mean
Hmm.
apartments and doing stuff. And so I kind of in my back and I remember like the owner of the building the last owner, he bought the building and he would move us around a lot to different buildings that he had throughout Queens and
Hmm.
Jamaica, Corona, Elmhurst. And I just remember thinking like this guy is so wealthy and this is the way to become wealthy, right? Just buy buildings. So in my mind, that's what I always thought I'd figure out how to get to. But being in New England, like that was just, in Boston, I remember I applied for this program for first-time home buyers in Dudley Station where they were renewing it. And Dudley was like a really, really ghetto area of Boston that they were trying to turn around. And it was like 90,000. It was like by far the cheapest place, like anywhere anybody knew of in Boston. And
Hmm.
I couldn't qualify for that. And I'm
Hmm.
just like, all right, we gotta try something else, right?
Right.
So I just thought that was it. And when I get to Baltimore and I see that, I'm thinking, I bet these places are affordable. And I look and I see, and that was all I stuck to me was the number,
Mm.
right? And they're beautiful, by the way. Architecturally, a lot of those houses are gorgeous, marble
Right.
steps. They're all like brownstones, but they're boarded up. And I'm seeing that, and I'm thinking
Yeah,
like
man.
there's opportunity here. And I
Right.
went in and I found a guy who he was a HUD broker and he let me into a couple for an
Mhm.
online auction one weekend, and we're going out looking, and I wanted to see them all. There were like 80 online. I wanted to see them all. I wore him out, and he just gave me his keys, and I went to check them out. And
Yeah.
I was going in and out of these places, and I had a screw gun, and we'd take down boards, go in. Like I wasn't afraid of the neighborhoods because even though it was not my neighborhood, like I
Yeah.
knew what the
It looks
element
like
was
yours.
like. So I always feel very comfortable, even to
Mhm.
this day.
Mhm.
And so it didn't bother me.
All right.
And yeah, I'd go in, check them out, and I would just, I don't know, just like I could see the vision of what they could be and how
Yeah.
beautiful they can be. And then you just start doing the math, like what would it cost? You start talking to people, meeting contract, and there's something about being young and excited, and that people just like that, and they start like embrace helping you
Gravitating.
out. I
Yeah,
mean,
they
they
start
tell you,
gravitating.
yeah, it's going to cost this much, it's going to take this long, and then
Mhm.
you do the math and you realize, okay, I could do this.
Yeah.
And then you just start going down that path and you do more and more. And before you knew it, I had done quite a bit and did it. Eventually I went all the way till 2009,
Mhm.
from about 2002 to 2009, full time. We were doing as many as like three at a time.
Right.
Um, and it was going well till it didn't, right?
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
want to make sure again. I pause you there because you started off by explaining to people that you saw what your dad did, and this is a very very important message in regards to parenting. It's a very important message in regards to whether it's fatherhood, motherhood, or whether you're the uncle, whether you're the guardian, whoever you are. The adults in young people's lives, they are watching you. All right, just like you, my dad is an architect.
Mm.
He would go to Baltimore, spend whole Saturdays in Baltimore looking at properties and just figuring out how he can help and figuring out what was investable and what was not investable. And these things, us young people, we pick up on, and it leads to generational wealth. It leads to opportunity. So whatever you're doing as an adult, understand your kids are watching it all, and it can have an effect on, and not can, but it definitely will have an effect on that kind of the subconscious ways in which they look at opportunities and they look at things that some people just won't see. You have opportunities to plant that seed in a young person, and you just never know when it's going to kind of harvest. Because again, like you said, you're in it, man. You're making six figures. You're doing it. You're killing the game. You got a house. You got kids, wife. Everything is going well. And like you just said, until it didn't, and you had a difficult situation in which you, I guess, tried to file for bankruptcy, and you did lost the money, and then you moved to Colorado. There was a lot of things going on within that period in which you had things going, it fell off, but then you were able to kind of climb yourself back. So I'll let you kind of speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for catching that too. I hadn't actually thought about it consciously
Mm-hmm.
until you asked a question. And so, yeah, that the modeling,
Yeah.
that we do as parents is just so important,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Um, yeah, so yeah, in no way, as everybody knows, we had the great financial crisis,
Mm-hmm.
and real estate was the leading industry in that, as we all know. And one of the issues I read, I forgot where it read, but there was something about like when you start off and you have a lot of success,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the worst thing that could happen to you, right? Because you just develop really bad habits, really lazy. You develop an ego, and that's exactly what happened. Like my first one, I
Mm-hmm.
remember I bought it for 19,000 through a HUD auction. It was a 1690 I don't know why these addresses are coming to me right now, but it was 1619 Ramsey Street in
Oh,
Baltimore.
yeah, I know.
And
Yeah, Ramsey, I've been on that street.
yeah, it ain't. If anybody goes to check it out, they're like, "Wow, what was he doing there?" But anyways, maybe they cleaned it up. I have no idea. I grew to love that neighborhood. But
Mhm.
anyways, the we had that, and I remember I set a budget for it and a
Mhm.
timeline, and everything you could imagine went wrong. It went over budget, over time, and and at the end of the day I walked away clearing $35,000, and at that time my salary was $30,000. So I was like, oh shit, that's it, this is it, I hit
Hey,
gold.
baby.
I
Yeah,
quit.
you
I
just
went
get
the
your
next one
salary
I
right,
had.
right?
I used that money and I got
Uh-huh.
and that's how and every single one I'd make a bigger and bigger mistake, or it'd
Uh-huh.
take longer or whatever. And still I made out. I mean, I had really lost for years and years. And what happens is that I didn't know is the economic cycle was a rising tide back then. So it's really easy to forgive all mistakes when you're in a rising tide, to be forgiven mistakes when you're in a rising tide.
Mm.
I thought it was me as one. I thought I was a genius. After a while, after like 2 or 3 of these, I'm like, I'm the golden child. I can't, nothing I do can go wrong. I am
Right.
brilliant. I am untouchable. I'm gonna get it till, then the tide turns,
Hmm.
and by then you just developed all these bad habits. You're not even, I was buying stuff sight unseen, barely
Right.
checking on. I've stopped doing the things I do to monitor the contractors,
Yeah.
and I had these massive lines of credits that banks would just give me. And I
Uh,
wouldn't use them for years because I wasn't leveraging. And then until I
yeah.
had to. And then before you know it, I didn't know how to manage leverage
Hmm.
and all this stuff. And then before you know it, I'm out. Right. And so the tide turned. And that was actually a bigger fall from grace for me, than like growing up the way I did. Because I actually had a great childhood. I loved my childhood. I was really happy. It isn't until now that you look back, I'm like, wow, that shit was crazy.
Exactly.
But
Because you
but
don't know
when
as
you go,
a kid, you just know that that's what it is. No one, you're
that's
not
life.
questioning this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I had
I
fun.
remember
I
actually because
mean,
I grew up, a lot of times my mother would send us to Brooklyn, New York, and I would walk to the corner store, not thinking there was a problem as a kid, like by myself, enjoying it, getting me a hero, go back to my cousins,
right,
so we chill. But as I got to high school and you hear these stories, you hear what the news says about shootings in this particular area in Brooklyn. I remember
right,
growing up and walking, making that same walk, and there's that level of self-conscious, like, oh man, I got to kind of duck and things like that. So
right.
completely right when it comes to that, especially when we tell our kids and what the media likes to pump out. Again, I'm going to keep reiterating this. It's important that you're there in the home, as adults.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say parents, as adults, whether you're a teacher or whatever, explaining to young people that, look, a lot of that stuff is gaslighting. A lot of that stuff, you don't have to be in fear for your life because you're walking to the corner store in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm glad you made
yeah.
the point.
Yeah, no doubt. And then when we had the loss as an adult, right? As a parent, I had young kids, I had 1 and a 3-year-old. We lived in what I thought was my dream house at the time.
Yeah.
And it's all
Now,
going
was this in
down,
Baltimore, the city, Baltimore, or were you like,
Yeah, in Baltimore, we lived in a great neighborhood, great, loved, one of those old four square Victorians on
yeah,
a great neighborhood in Northeast Baltimore. And it was kind of my dream home. That's what I always envisioned.
right.
And we're losing it. I had to personally guarantee some stuff, went through all our savings,
Hmm.
our lines of credit, the whole nine. I'm trying to keep everything afloat. You don't realize what's really happening is maybe
Right,
the tide had shifted.
right.
There's a guy named Howard Marks who studies market cycles, and he talks about sea changes,
Hmm.
and that's what was happening. I didn't realize all that. And then you have it, and there's a part personally that you just at first I'm thinking like, yeah, no big deal. You go and you file. I'm like, all right, this will give me a chance to start all over. But man, the mental toll that takes on you, you just
Right.
feel so defeated. And
Hmm.
people are like, it was the times, but it was more than that, right?
Yeah.
It was me as well. You got to take responsibility for that. Yeah, the times were there, but there was something else there. So that's really when my personal development journey really began,
Hmm.
right? I mean, honestly, if I didn't have kids at that time, who knows what I would have done? I was a heavy drinker. I used to brew beer at that time, so I just make it to drink it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
That's a tough thing for a drinker that's a tough skill for a drinker to have because then you can make your beer and you can really do what you got to do. So that's not
oh
a
yeah, no
not
doubt,
a
yeah,
productive thing if you're a drinker, if you're in that state. And the thing that I'm glad you are very transparent, very vulnerable right now in terms of telling how low you were, because it's a really great opportunity for you to speak on how your wife stepped up in situations like this. Because I believe you said she had a job offer in Colorado or an interview in Colorado, and you
yeah,
went together. And I always love the saying, the couple that grinds together shines together, or the mindset by Carol Dweck. She has a piece in that book where she said
yeah,
they worked happily ever after. They didn't live happily ever after. They worked happily ever after. So, you're going through all that in Baltimore. You're, again, mentally, it has to be draining because now you have kids. You don't know where they're going to be living. You don't know where the next check is coming from. The true entrepreneurial hit is coming now. But then you're able to get a situation in Colorado. And then the world, like what happened for me after I was done playing football, I went on like a couple runs by myself, and it was like, oof, I like this. I like the mindset. I
yeah,
like was doing for my business. So you went to Colorado and things started to, at least the tide started to shift a little bit in a positive way. So, go ahead. You could kind of speak on that a little bit.
Yeah. Actually, it was a little bit before that. There was a trip, I was doing a road trip from, I think it was from Rhode Island back to Baltimore. I just went to visit my family, and we stopped and saw an old college friend. He was living in Rego Park, Queens at the time, and we
Mm-hmm.
just stopped to see him. I hadn't seen him in years, and we just met up and caught up with him, and he was telling me that I got to preface this by saying he
Yeah.
actually listens to a lot of stuff I'm on. He's that friend who, we all got him, right? A very non-athletic,
Yes.
clumsy, kind of like, and I met up with him, and he said he's going to run a marathon. And
Right.
at that time, I had never met anybody who was doing that. I never thought about it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, yeah, man, come on, really? Like,
Right.
you of all people that,
Yeah.
so after that initial shock factor and funny, I start getting curious and just asking him about how and all that stuff. And he gives me this book that he was using called the Non-Runners Marathon Training. And
Uh,
it's this book that it's like it reads like a journal.
mm-hmm.
Great book, by the way. And I think it's a college class. It takes place. I got to buy it and reread it because I want to verify this, but I think it took place
Yeah.
at University of Idaho or something like that.
Okay.
And the class was on running a marathon. The final exam is you got to run a marathon, not timed or anything, but you got to get through it. And it breaks it down, I believe, into 16 weeks. And
Right.
each week is a plan of what you do and
Right.
the exercise it, and then the students journal about how they feel. So I started doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and prior to that, you got to be able to run a half an hour straight without stopping. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter the speed or anything. And so it says, go do that right now. And if you can do that, then let's go.
That's
And I
step one.
couldn't.
Just run 30 minutes straight.
That's right. And at that time, I couldn't, man. I couldn't run 5 minutes. So they have a little like couch to 5K plan in there. And that's what I did until I
Mm-hmm.
got myself up to it. And then I started that book. So my first goal, and then one of the first things they tell you to do is set the intention by picking a marathon. Like right now, before you proceed, pick one and sign up for it. Go put the money in and register.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's what I did. I signed up for Philadelphia Marathon. This was 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And I start following the book, and I did it, and it was an absolutely miserable experience.
I mean,
I mean,
I
anybody who,
attempted my first one last year, and I got to mile 14. Ended up
yeah.
dehydrated. They took me to the hospital. I couldn't.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
wow.
I
Yeah, it sucks.
thought I was hydrated. I did. I swear I thought I was hydrated. Obviously, was not hydrated enough. So I know that feeling very. The first experience for me was pretty bad.
Yeah, you had it really rough, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always joke that the first one we do it out of ignorance.
Yeah.
The second one we do it out of stupidity. Because like, why
Right.
would you go put yourself through that shit
But
again,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, man, that's what got me running. And after it was over, I'm like, yeah, never again.
Mhm.
And I talked to my buddy about it. We're like, never again. And we're like, unless we can do New York City. Because we were both
There you
from New
go.
York. And we're
There
like,
you
all
go.
right.
All right.
So we signed up for
That
that.
one's hard to
Well,
get into, though, isn't it?
it is. They used to have a rule where if you apply 3 years in a row, you used to
Mhm.
have to pay like $12. And if you applied 3 years in a row and you don't get in, you get in on the fourth.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's how I got in.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I moved to Colorado, and at first I would go to like local brew pubs here to meet people, and they all
Mhm.
have run clubs, and I'm thinking I'm big shit because I just ran a marathon, and
Mhm.
really quickly I learned like that ain't nothing here. I thought I had the 26.2 sticker on my
Mhm.
car, and
Mhm.
I'm thinking I'm a big deal, and I'm like nobody has that around here. I must be the shit here, right?
Mhm.
And well, then I'm hanging out with these people after, the little 3 mile run who had like 60-year-old ladies who were burning me there. Right. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking,
Yeah.
like, what the heck's going on? They're talking about how they're doing a marathon this weekend and ultra
Mhm.
next weekend, all this stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just mesmerized. Like, what? How? What?
Yeah.
Like, why don't you guys got the 26.2 sticker on the back of your car?
Right.
And they're like, because what's the big deal? Like, we all
Yeah.
do them. Right. So,
Right. Yeah,
so what do you
I
know?
mean, I'm in West Palm. I joined a group called West Palm Beach Roadrunners, and same exact thing, man. I was humbled to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And that started the journey. And I started going there's one in Boulder, Colorado.
Hmm.
I started running with them every Wednesday. And
Hmm.
before you know, I start moving up a little bit, and I'm curious about other clubs, running more, join the trail running club. Then we'd go running in the mountains like overnight and stuff. I mean, it just became amazing. And the people I'm meeting there are just like very different people than I had ever known, right? Like they're running big
Mindset.
companies.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean they had these really successful exits from businesses they grew.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, they were just incredible. Just incredible high achievers at whatever they did.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just like, wow, how lucky am I? So I just that happened. And along the way, my buddy and I kept trying to get into New York City, and then we got in 2014. So I'm like, all right, I got to really start training for this. So I joined a local run group, like a training group,
Hmm.
and that exposed, you know, people are taking their running really serious. It's just like fun runs anymore. And I see what they're doing, and everybody's talking about qualifying for Boston. I'm like, oh, I wonder what that's all about. I remember
Hmm.
Boston. I used to go drink on the streets on that day, and it's the only day you can get
That's
away
the
with
good
it, right?
school, right? Right.
Yeah, and I'm like, I want to go, and I didn't know what it meant at the time. I
Right.
couldn't break 4 hours. I did when I did New York City. That was like my last over 4 hour marathon. I think it was like
Hmm.
406 or 407, something
Right.
like that. And but you know, then I started talking to my coach because I was naturally pretty fast in the workouts, but I couldn't really run long fast.
Hmm.
And he's like, you know, Louis, you just don't run enough outside of here. And when you come in here, you give it your all. So you're working too hard
Hmm.
and not doing all the easy runs, the work outside, like the small things,
Hmm.
right? Like the stuff when nobody's watching,
Exactly.
working on your core, the strength building, eating right, you know, getting up early, all these different things. And I'm like, okay, so you know, you just start. I start like seeing somebody who is a little bit faster than me, a little subgroup, and I start
Mhm.
trying to hang out with them. Before you know it, I'm just as fast as them. I'm trying to get to the next group, and each one of them, they all do something else, a little bit something else that I'm
Right.
picking up a trait, and then before you know it, I'm running with like the fastest groups, and you know I'm starting to win races in my age group and all this
Hmm.
stuff, and I'm like, wow, this is an incredible feeling. It started to become normal. Like
Yeah.
winning started to become normal. Like I
Yeah.
now get disappointed when I go to a race and I'm not like top three in my age group, you know,
Exactly. I'm the
not
same.
winning the whole race.
I'm the
Yeah.
same.
So it's I had never been that way like
Hmm.
before, but it gets cool. And you know, and you're invited to different parties, and you just
Yeah.
started to like get invited to look at businesses and other things, and I'm like, wow, this is just incredible.
Yeah, that was
And
gonna be my
then
question though, is like when you start getting this, because this is something I can speak personally on as well, is when I started winning races and when I started being a regular runner and around these like-minded people, there's certain things in my business that I was able to let go of and focus on the main thing more, and certain things like before that I was like, I'm wasting so much time doing that. I'm wasting so much time maybe posting on social media when I should be focusing on this direct client and getting this sale. What kind of examples and stories can you tell in terms of when you're starting to develop and you realize, hey, I got a talent for this running thing, something that a lot of people don't like, but I'm developing in it? How was your business starting to kind of run that parallel in terms of your decisions?
yeah, I think the big breakthrough for me was when I finally qualified for Boston.
Hmm.
Around I think it was in 2018 when I qualified.
Right.
And
That's a big deal. Forgot,
there
by
was
the way,
something.
listeners, that's a big deal. All right. There's a lot of people trying to qualify for that one. That's a big deal
Yeah,
to
thank you.
qualify for Boston.
Especially when you my first one was almost 5 hours, a
Mhm.
4:56. And then,
All right.
you know, I had to get for my age, I had to get under 3:10,
Yeah.
3 hours, which is a fast marathon.
It's a
And
fast marathon, yes.
I mean, that's almost 2 hours I took off. So you're thinking like, wow. Well, I think it was the first time in my life since those early years in my early 20s. I used to be a big goal setter, visioning person, all
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd set like 5 year goals. And
Mhm.
I didn't realize and I reached a lot of them early on. I guess I just didn't think big enough or what
Mhm.
have you, or luck or whatnot.
Right.
Um, and that was my first like long-term goal because after New York, after like my first Chicago, I realized, wow, this is going to be really hard to get down to sub 310.
Mhm.
How would that be? So I met with my coach, and he's like, you can't do it right away. You got to do it incrementally over time. So
Mhm.
it became a 5 year goal. So everything for me became about qualifying for Boston by 2020,
Yes.
right? So I just was like, and I made everything I did, like started
The way you
visualizing it,
eat, the
changing
way
my
everything. Yeah, a lot of things. Right.
exactly. And so then little by little, everything presents itself like
Mhm.
the steps, right? First, you know, you start to realize, yeah, I didn't know eating was important, like the way you eat. And
Mhm.
little by little, I learned about the importance of that in the foods. And everything just becomes, the path starts to present itself.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you qualify and you go. And I just remember thinking like, all right, it was my first breakthrough again since I was like in my 20s, where I just felt like I can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
You just become unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just start to take those lessons,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't appreciate them and recognize them as lessons that were put for us, and apply them to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So now, like business, I have a big exit goal for a business I want to grow. I did, a couple of years ago, I didn't know how to get there,
Right.
and now like I just set the intention and I said, okay, over a 5-year period, I'm going to have a business that's going to grow
Right.
to this level and we're
Yes.
going to get there. And it sounds foolish. And I honestly, I'm a year away from turning 50, which was my goal. And it's probably not going to happen by then.
Mm-hmm.
But now I see how to get there.
Yeah.
Like all along the way through my podcast and the Wayfinder show, I met a guy who we had him on. His name is Max Lewis,
Mm-hmm.
who you should get on the show, by the way. And he grew an incredible propane business to have over a 15-year period. He had a $37 million exit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, hey, how would you do that in 5 years? And he's like, oh, simple, roll them up. Just buy a whole bunch of little ones and roll them up. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, of course.
Yeah.
Duh. Here I
Right.
am, 10
Right.
years older, and I don't recognize that. And then that bell just clicked. And then I'm like, okay, I got to look for little businesses with a good foundation in a highly fragmented in a highly fragmented industry and just
Mm-hmm.
start rolling them up. And so I'm
Mm.
looking for that. And then you start to see the pieces of how you can do it quicker and quicker. And then
Mm-hmm.
it becomes a game, right? And then what's funny about that is when you recognize that, you start meeting with other business people, entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
talking about business. And those people who are really high achievers that you just can't comprehend, all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden you can comprehend it. You realize this is what
Yep.
they do.
Yeah.
They're thinking about billion-dollar ideas where you can't comprehend that. And
Mm-hmm.
how do you get there? And they already see the steps to get there. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden I'm like, oh, okay, this is all
Yeah.
I got to do for it, right?
Yeah.
So
The
yeah.
goal setting is so crucial, and I'm glad you brought this up because that goal setting, when you set, even if it's a goal of just running 15 minutes, if you get in the
Mhm.
habit of these goal setting, you're going to figure out ways to keep in the main thing the main thing. It will improve your business, which in turn is going to improve your personal life. It's going to improve the way you show up in your, in whatever friendships or relationships, whatever type of relationships you have. You're going to want to be around the right people because your goals are so clearly set in your head. If your plan is, all right, I'm going to run this marathon, but I'm not going to run it all today. It's going to have to be a process. There's people telling you there's going to be a process. And even when I run with the group that I run with now, you always have to kind of overhear them talking about, all right, this is the business I'm going to be doing today. This, I got to get to work at this time. So many things it focuses you up on. And that's, I want to give you I do want to be very respectful of your time. I want to give you the opportunity now to, talk a little bit more about your business now, what you're doing, how people can get in touch with you, and, where do you see it going? You kind of already mentioned having an exit strategy, but where do you see things going in the next 10, 15 years down the line?
Yeah, thank you. My primary business is a real estate brokerage business here in Denver, Colorado. It's called Pioneer Group Realty.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of do a little bit of everything, just because over the years I've built up so so much experience. I have a hard time niching down. It's still
Yeah.
a problem I have.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, what we're doing the most of is residential real estate, just because that's what's working best. But I've done everything from pieces of land. I have some of that too. Like I sell housing projects. I've sold retail, you name it, a development, done a lot of land development. But residential real estate is what is working best right now. So that's kind of what I've been sticking with.
Okay.
Um, and real estate, I'll always have a hand in that. I think as more and more, I will probably operationally move away from that. Um, some and probably get more into business acquisitions and growth. So
Mm-hmm.
something where I can buy businesses with management in place and just grow it, like
Mm-hmm.
we talked about. I did just get hired to be a CEO of a luxury short-term rental business here in Vail, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's something I'll be looking to grow. I only took the position because I can grow equity stake in it as well.
Right.
Um,
And
if we
it
execute
fits
the
into
plan
what
right.
you're already doing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. But the other thing, the thing I'm actually most passionate about, Aswan, is my podcast. And I have no idea what the direction it's going to take,
Mm-hmm.
although it's opening up a ton of doors, which is also a problem.
No, it does.
But
I actually did a video when JJ Redick got hired with the Lakers.
oh
I did
wow.
a video saying podcasting is the new way to do job interviews.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the
On
way
it.
you don't have to have thousands and thousands of listeners. You got to know who you want to talk to and just hit the record button and just start talking. This show has
That's
been
it.
out by the time this comes out, it's gonna be close to 900 episodes. And it was literally
Wow.
started at me
Congratulations.
doing exactly that. Hit the record button, let's go get it. I just bought a mic maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
so
funny.
that's how you just gotta
Yeah,
go.
this CEO position I got, I've never even gone for a CEO position. Like
Yeah,
any business I've started, I call myself CEO, but I've never
yeah.
been offered one for a company I've worked for. And it was through my podcast. It was a guest. He remembered me from when I interviewed him in a year
Exactly.
ago. And
Yeah.
he's like, "Hey, I got this business. It's doing all right, but I need to get it to the next level. Would
Yeah.
I know you're in real estate. Would you be interested?" And we
Right.
spent a week last week. He took me to one of his properties in at the Ritz-Carlton in Vail, Colorado. And
Mm-hmm.
we spent the whole week there going through the business top to bottom, going to meetings. And I'm like, yeah, this is excellent. Let's do it.
You
And
have it.
so it's amazing. So yeah, it is amazing. But more importantly, as one
Okay.
is I think about this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't figured out how I want to do this, but I'm still that kid from Central Falls, Rhode Island,
Mm-hmm.
who believes like the people I grew up with are the smartest people I've ever been around, the best
Mm-hmm.
people I've ever been around, and I want to help them, right? And now it's not them so much, but their kids and my nieces and nephews,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I want to do something. My original intent was to go and provide inspiration for them to, level up their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And not just anybody else along the way. But it provides me a platform for learning from
Mm-hmm.
others as well.
Nice.
But hopefully in those learnings, we'll be able to share them with other people who might not have access as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, they can go and do great things.
Now, what is the
Yeah.
best way for people to get in touch with you?
The Wayfinder Show, or no, just wayfindershow.com is my website. They can go on there, sign up for our newsletter. They can get send me a message there as well. If they want to hit me directly, I'm not afraid to give my number. It's 720-445 5847. That
Mm-hmm.
5847 spells out my name, which is Luis, Luis.
Okay.
Or they can email me directly at luihernandez at gmail.com.
Cool. And we'll make sure all that's included in the show notes as well, so you guys don't have to stop what you're doing and start writing it down like that. We'll make sure it's included in the show notes as well. So, Lewis, the one thing I do to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are back in Baltimore. You're back in Baltimore. You're meeting with banks. You're meeting with everyone, and you're trying to figure out how exactly you're going to make this thing work, but it's starting to hit you that it's not going to work. I want you to pretend that version of Lewis has come into the Zoom room. Give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't expecting, I knew you asked this question, but I wasn't expecting you to come at that particular point in time. That's cool. So now I'm going to change my answer then based on that. I think the answer would be not to go at it alone
Yeah.
and look for people. Put yourself in places where you are the dumbest person in the room, the least successful person in the room, and ask for help there.
Amen.
You know?
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very strong piece of advice because it does take you humbling yourself. It does take you, and I'm speaking specifically to you as a listener now, it takes you humbling yourself, admitting that you do not have all the answers. No one does. No one ever will have all the answers. And the best thing you can do for yourself and your personal and your professional development is get around folks that are doing the things you want to do, no more than you, and soak up as much game as humanly possible. One of my favorite episodes actually of Shark Tank is when I think there was somebody coming in, and I think it was this Mr. Wonderful said, "Hey, look, if you really an entrepreneur, you're just going to take the advice and go with it." So I'm giving you guys the same thing. Take the advice, go with it, and go create something. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.
Thank you.